What a fantastic life to have seen all that, all those changes right up into the jet age.
Right? Pretty incredible.
Traveling up that Nazca wagon road, it was 1925. Not far from Collins and Telegraph Line, Blackwater Road to 6 Mile. Homesteading meadows shining through, stopping houses for miles. Traveling up that dusty wagon road, I ain't seen no one for miles.
All right, here we go. So what are we talking about, Mark?
We're talking about the Century Family Recognition Project.
Right, where are we at with that?
Well, Rob, let's talk about the Staebler family story. And what do you know about that?
Well, the Staeblers had a farm just 2 miles up the Fraser River from Quesnel, and a large farm, 640 acres. Even back in the 1990s, most of the buildings were still standing. There was a number of old buildings against the hillside, and the large farmhouse. The large farmhouse was built in 1912 at the cost of $4,000, which was quite an extravagant amount at that time. And a lot of the machinery was still there. I was lucky enough to have a couple tours around the place from Donnie Mitchell. He was a nephew of Emil Staebler, and he showed me around. Really incredible place. It had a sternwheeler dock down on the river where the sternwheelers would dock there and take on cargo and drop off cargo. And Cataline had a trail going through the place, predating the farm. He was packing with mules up to the Bouchie Valley, Nechako area. The telegraph trail passed through. So the original telegraph trail, the Collins Telegraph Trail, as well as later the Dominion Telegraph Trail. And of course, that would be the Klondike Gold Rush Trail of '98 went through the farm. What else do I remember? Donnie took me inside one of the older buildings on the hillside, and Emil had a license plate from every year from 1928 to in the 1950s or 60s nailed on the wall. They looked like brand new license plates still.
Did Emil drive an automobile himself?
Well, he did actually. In 1928, the Fraser River Bridge crossing from Quesnel to West Quesnel, Bouchie Lake area is now operational. And Emil goes into town and buys a 1928 Chevrolet touring car from Johnson Brothers Motors. And interesting story about that, Emil drives the car once a year into town to get his coffee and beans and whatever else he needs for the year. He parks at the livery stable. He walks across the bridge to the government office to get a license, walks back to the livery stable, puts it on the car, drives the car into town, loads up everything he needs, and drives out to the farm again. And once a year, continues doing this up into the 1950s.
Well, there's certainly lots going on at that place. Went from paddle wheelers to pack trains, right up to automobiles. What about horse and buggy and wagon?
So when the original Staeblers moved there, Christopher Staebler, and he brought his wife and a daughter there in 1892, there was no wagon road even. There was just a trail in. And by around 1900, Christopher Staebler actually cut the trail out and made a wagon road right back into Quesnel, so 2 miles of wagon road that he cut out.
You mentioned something about this Cataline character and his pack train.
Right, Cataline. So he was a French packer, and he came over originally for the Barkerville and Caribou Gold Rush. So 1858, 59, he was in what is later British Columbia. and he was well-known, legendary figure in the gold rush. Large pack trains, mule pack trains. The old maps show the Cataline Trail throughout. Once the Caribou Wagon Road was built, then he wasn't really needed to pack anymore, sort of put out of business. But there was other gold rushes going on to the north, smaller gold rushes, and he started packing goods to those gold rushes that needed his services. So he was going right through the Staebler property, and he had a campground on the property when Staeblers took it over.
All right. So did Emil have any brothers and sisters?
Well, we really should talk about a little bit before Emil. And it's hard to believe there was anything going on before 1894, but that's when Emil was born. The farm was quite well established already. So the farm itself belonged to James Reed back as far as 1862. And Christopher Staebler came to the Caribou in 1883, I believe it was. And he was out in the gold fields around Barkerville working or mining or whatever. And in 1892, he went back to France and brought his wife and his daughter over, and they took up the Reed property and took it over.
Okay, who is James Reed?
So James Reed is a historical figure that came to Quesnel during the gold rush, pre-1862, and he had multiple business interests, investments. He had a flour mill in Quesnel, which was an important factor in the Staebler Farm. He was part owners of some of the stern wheelers, paddle wheelers. He also had a sawmill in town, and I'm sure he had other investments that I'm not aware of. And he was important enough that we have a street named after him. Our main business street downtown Quesnel is called Reed Street.
So you've mentioned Reed and the flour mill. How did that tie into the farm?
Well, under James Reed's ownership, the Staebler Farm was producing grain for his flour mill in Quesnel, and then the flour mill was producing flour for Quesnel and area. So for 30 years, the farm was developed to be a grain farm, and then Staeblers took it over, and they continued with the grain production. They did hay production, and they also raised cattle and hogs and the typical farm products.
So you spoke of Chris Sr., his wife and his daughter. Where does Emil come into the picture?
So Christopher Staebler is the original settler on the Staebler Farm, and he buys the farm from Reed. He goes back to France and brings his wife, who he's already been married to for 10 years or so, and his daughter. His wife's name is Christine. This is where it gets a little bit confusing. And his daughter's name is Christina, or maybe it's the other way around. And they come over and settle on the farm, live on the farm, work the farm. In another year, they have another daughter, and her name is Mina. That's in 1893. And then in 1894, Emil's born. And I forgot to mention that they have a son, Louis, who's back in France, and he moves out here as well a few months after the original family settles in.
So we've got a family of 6 working and living on the farm.
Right, so we have 6 members of the Staebler family living and working the farm. But by 1903, Christopher Staebler, Emil's father, passes away. At that point, I believe Louis Staebler, the oldest brother, is looking after the farm, managing it, and doing most of the work. And Emil's only 10. Emil's sort of the central figure to this story, so that's why I keep coming back to him.
So Christopher Staebler passes away in 1903.
So Mrs. Staebler, Emil's mother, she goes on at the farm for a few more years. Louis also moves on, and he now goes out to the Barkerville gold fields and is working out there. And Emil is now running the farm on his own.
So how does Emil maintain a large farm like that by himself?
During harvest season, etc., he's hiring people. I know in the 30s he hired my dad over the summer to help him hay, and in the 20s there's names in his ledger like Arden Rawling that he's paying $2 a day to help him hay, and a few other names. Well, Edward, do you think you'll ever get good at that?
I don't know. I've never played a mandolin before, but I'll keep practicing.
Where did you get it?
I borrowed this off of Emil Staebler.
Oh, I didn't realize he played mandolin.
He played mandolin and fiddle.
Really? Wow. I guess he doesn't do it anymore since the accident.
No, he doesn't.
That's too bad. How's he doing anyway?
Emil's doing pretty good. He's working hard on the farm like a farmer always does.
Does he still have Chris and Margaret working on the farm there for him? They were First Nations, weren't they?
That's correct. They were First Nations. And no, they're not working there. They're long gone.
Oh, okay. Didn't they just live in a cabin just up the hill above the house?
That's correct. And above that was a couple of graves of their children.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Well, there's a few graves around there. A.J. Fisher's buried just on the edge of the property down by the river, too.
Yes, I've heard about that.
Yeah, that was, I think, 1928.
Well, that's interesting, Rob. But tell me more about his social activities in the community.
Well, in the earlier years, he's quite active socially in the community. And then there's an accident on the farm in 1935, I think it was. He's cutting firewood with a wood saw, and he cuts off fingers and thumb on, I think it's his left hand. At that point, he can't play a musical instrument anymore. So he sort of withdraws socially from the community, it seems like, and becomes quite shy.
Well, that's dreadful. He goes from being socially active to a recluse. Can you tell me more?
I really can't tell you a lot more. I know that he's very shy. Like I mentioned, in 1971, they want to honor the pioneers of the Bouchie Lake community, and my dad goes down to pick him up, to bring him up for the celebrations and the parade, and he's quite shy. It took some convincing for him to join in the celebrations. So he very much is a recluse, and he remains on the farm. And Emil, in about 1985, he moves into Dunroven, a seniors home in Quesnel, and he spends the last couple of years of his life there, and passes away in 1987 at the age of 93.
93. That's a good life.
He lived
Sad story at the end, but still a good life. So there's nothing left of the old farm anymore.
just the fields, and that's it. That's all there is.
Well, I guess that's the end of this story.
I guess it is. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to support the Century Family Recognition Project, you can find more information about it in the link in the information below. If you'd like to show support for my videos, you can buy me a coffee, and that link is also in the information. And also, comments and hitting the like button is very much appreciated. Thanks for watching.
Traveling up that Nasco wagon road, living the best we can, living the best we can.